I've spent thousands of hours in the sprawling cities of Grand Theft Auto. From the top-down chaos of Liberty City to the sun-soaked streets of Los Santos, I've hijacked cars, outrun cops, and lived countless digital lives. But there's something I've been thinking about lately that keeps me up at night. Who really is the greatest GTA protagonist of all time? We've stepped into the shoes of silent killers, conflicted criminals, and ambitious hustlers. We've experienced their triumphs, their failures, and their often tragic ends. But which of these digital anti-heroes truly stands above the rest? Which character's journey resonated the most? Which protagonist best embodied what Grand Theft Auto is all about? Today, I'm ranking every major GTA protagonist from worst to best. Not just based on how fun they were to play, but on their character development, their impact on the series, and their lasting legacy in gaming culture. I've replayed every mainline GTA game, analyzed hours of cutscenes, and dug deep into the lore to make this definitive ranking. And I know what you're thinking. These rankings are always subjective. You're right. This is my personal ranking based on my experience with these characters. I'm sure some of you will disagree, and that's fine. In fact, I want to hear your rankings in the comments below. But I promise you this. By the end of this video, you'll see these characters in a whole new light, and you might even reconsider who your favorite really is. So grab a snack, silence your phone, and let's take a journey through the criminal underworld of Grand Theft Auto to find out who truly deserves the crown of greatest protagonist. To truly understand these characters, we need to go back to where it all began. When Grand Theft Auto first hit shelves in 1997, the protagonist wasn't even a defined character. You simply chose from a selection of avatars with no backstory, no dialogue, and no personality. They were blank slates, vessels for chaos rather than actual characters. This continued with GTA 2's Claude, who, despite having a name, remained largely undefined. It wasn't until GTA 3 that Rockstar began to understand the narrative potential of their protagonists. And as the series evolved, so did the complexity of its characters. What's fascinating is how the protagonists evolved alongside the technical capabilities of each game. As Rockstar could render more detailed worlds, they could also craft more nuanced characters. As voice acting became the norm, silent protagonists gave way to fully voiced characters with distinct personalities. And as the writing matured, so did the themes these characters embodied. But what makes a great GTA protagonist? Is it their story arc, their personality, their gameplay abilities, or something more intangible? That special quality that makes them memorable years after you've completed their story. I believe it's a combination of all these factors, plus how well they embody the themes of their respective games. The best GTA protagonists aren't just fun to play, they're complex characters whose journeys say something meaningful about the world Rockstar has created. So with that context in mind, let's start our ranking with the protagonist that, despite my best efforts to appreciate, lands at the bottom of my list. At the bottom of our list is Claude from GTA 3. Now, I know what you're thinking. How can you put the protagonist of the game that revolutionized the series at the bottom? Hear me out. Claude is a silent protagonist in a game that was finding its narrative footing. While this worked for the time, his complete lack of personality or character development makes him the least compelling protagonist in the series. He's betrayed by his girlfriend in the opening scene, and his entire motivation seems to be revenge, but we never really get inside his head. Claude never speaks a single word throughout the entire game. While this was a technical limitation at the time, it results in a character that feels more like an avatar than a person. He's a blank slate that the player projects onto, which was fine for 2001, but doesn't hold up when compared to the rich characterization of later protagonists. That said, I have to acknowledge Claude's historical importance. He was the first 3D protagonist in the series, and his stoic nature did create a certain mystique. There's something to be said for a character who lets his actions speak louder than words. And Claude's actions speak volumes, usually in explosions and gunfire. But historical importance aside, when ranking these characters on their merits as protagonists, Claude simply doesn't have the depth or development to rank higher on this list. He laid the groundwork for what was to come, but was quickly overshadowed by more complex characters. Moving up slightly, we have Toni Cipriani from Liberty City Stories. Toni suffers from being caught between eras. He's more developed than Claude, but lacks the depth of later protagonists. His story of returning to Liberty City after laying low for killing a made man had potential, but ultimately feels like a side story in the larger GTA universe. Toni's most defining characteristic is perhaps his relationship with his mother, who is perpetually disappointed in him, despite his rise through the criminal ranks. This adds a touch of humor and humanity to his character, but it's played mostly for laughs rather than meaningful development. What keeps Toni from ranking lower is that he does have some personality and clear motivations. His loyalty to the Leone family and his desire to prove himself drive the narrative forward in ways that Claude's silent revenge quest doesn't. But compared to the protagonist we'll discuss later, Toni feels one-dimensional, a soldier following orders rather than a character with agency and depth. At number 10, we have Mike from GTA Advance, a game many of you probably haven't played due to its release on the Game Boy Advance. Mike's story is actually quite tragic. He plans to leave the criminal life behind with his mentor Vinny, only for Vinny to be killed, sending Mike on a quest for answers and revenge. Mike ranks this low partly due to the technical limitations of the platform. The Game Boy Advance couldn't deliver the same narrative experience as the console and PC titles, resulting in a more simplified character and story. However, Mike does show more personality than Claude through text dialogues, and his motivation, finding who betrayed his friend, gives him a clearer character arc. What's interesting about Mike is that he's one of the few GTA protagonists who explicitly wants out of the criminal lifestyle from the beginning. This adds a layer of tragedy to his story that resonates with later, more developed protagonists. But the limitations of the platform and the game's relative obscurity keep Mike from making a bigger impact in the GTA protagonist pantheon. Victor Vance from Vice City Stories lands at number 9. Vic is interesting because he's one of the few GTA protagonists who starts with noble intentions. He joins the army to provide for his dysfunctional family, particularly his sick brother. Of course, this being GTA, he's quickly corrupted and drawn into the criminal underworld. Vic's family-focused motivation makes him more sympathetic than many GTA protagonists. His relationship with his brothers adds emotional weight to his story, and his reluctance to embrace the criminal lifestyle, at least initially, sets him apart from characters who are criminals from the start. What holds Victor back is that his character development feels somewhat predictable. His transformation from reluctant criminal to drug empire boss doesn't break new ground for the series. And knowing his ultimate fate from Vice City, where he's killed in a drug deal gone wrong, adds a layer of futility to his story that, while thematically appropriate, makes his journey feel less impactful. At number 8, we have Johnny Klebitz from The Lost and Damned. Johnny represents something different in the GTA universe. He's not trying to climb the criminal ladder or build an empire. Instead, he's trying to hold together a crumbling motorcycle club while dealing with its self-destructive leader, Billy Gray. Johnny's loyalty to the Lost, even as it falls apart around him, makes him a compelling tragic figure. He's trying to modernize and stabilize the club, moving away from old-school violence toward more sustainable criminal enterprises, which creates an interesting tension between tradition and progress. What makes Johnny memorable is his clear moral code. Despite being a criminal, he has lines he won't cross and principles he adheres to. This makes his eventual fate in GTA 5 all the more shocking and disappointing for fans who connected with his character. Johnny ranks here because while his character has depth and his story is compelling, it's ultimately a smaller, more contained narrative than those of the protagonists ranked above him. His story is a side chapter in the larger GTA 4 universe, albeit a well-crafted one. Coming in at number 7 is Luis Fernando Lopez from The Ballad of Gay Toni. Luis brings something fresh to the series. He's not starting from the bottom, nor is he a hardened criminal from the outset. Instead, he's a nightclub manager and bodyguard caught between worlds, the glitzy nightlife of Liberty City's elite and the gritty streets he grew up on. Luis's relationship with Toni Prince, Gay Toni, forms the emotional core of the game. Their loyalty to each other, despite Toni's self-destructive tendencies, creates a dynamic that feels different from the usual GTA mentor-protege relationship. Luis isn't just working for Toni. He's protecting him, often from himself. What makes Luis compelling is his struggle with identity. He's moved up in the world but remains connected to his roots in the projects. He navigates high society but never quite belongs there. This tension gives his character nuance that many GTA protagonists lack. Luis ranks here because, while his story and character are well developed, they don't quite reach the emotional depths or thematic richness of the protagonists ahead of him. His journey is compelling, but ultimately feels less consequential in the grand scheme of the GTA universe. At number 6, we have Franklin Clinton from GTA 5. Franklin represents the classic GTA rags to riches story, a young man from the streets looking to escape poverty and make something of himself. What sets Franklin apart is his self-awareness. He knows the criminal life is destructive, but sees it as his only path to advancement. Franklin's relationship with Michael forms one of the most interesting dynamics in the series, a mentor-protege relationship that evolves into something more complex, as Franklin begins to question Michael's wisdom and motives. His frustration with his friend Lamar, who remains stuck in small-time criminal thinking, highlights Franklin's ambition and desire for growth. What holds Franklin back in this ranking is that he sometimes gets overshadowed by the larger personalities of Michael and Trevor. In a game with 3 protagonists, Franklin occasionally feels like the straight man to their more dramatic characters. His story arc, while well executed, is also the most conventional of the 3. That said, Franklin's grounded perspective provides an essential balance to GTA 5's narrative. His relative normalcy makes the insanity around him all the more impactful, and his journey from repo man to wealthy criminal is satisfying to experience. Perhaps surprisingly, at number 5, I've placed Huang from Chinatown Wars. Huang is often overlooked in these discussions, but he brings something unique to the table, a sardonic, darkly humorous perspective that perfectly matches the tone of Chinatown Wars. Huang is the privileged son of a triad boss who comes to Liberty City to deliver a family heirloom, only to be ambushed, left for dead, and drawn into a power struggle within the triads. What makes Huang interesting is his fish-out-of-water status and his cynical commentary on the criminal world he's navigating. Through Huang's narration and text messages, we get a character who's simultaneously privileged and vulnerable, arrogant and resourceful. His journey from entitled rich kid to hardened criminal is compelling, and his sarcastic observations provide a meta-commentary on GTA tropes that feels fresh. Huang ranks this high because he manages to be a fully realized character despite the technical limitations of the Nintendo DS and PSP. Through clever writing and the game's unique visual style, Chinatown Wars creates a protagonist who stands out in the GTA pantheon for his distinctive voice and perspective. At number 4, we have Michael DeSanta from GTA 5. Michael represents something we hadn't seen before in a GTA protagonist. What happens after the happy ending? Having successfully pulled off the big score and escaped into witness protection, Michael should be living the dream. Instead, he's miserable, trapped in a gilded cage with a family that resents him and a gnawing emptiness he can't fill. Michael's midlife crisis drives much of GTA 5's narrative, and his return to crime isn't motivated by necessity or ambition, but by a desperate search for meaning and the thrill he once knew. This makes him one of the most psychologically complex characters in the series. His relationship with his family, particularly his attempts to connect with his children despite having no idea how to be a good father, adds emotional depth to his character. And his friendship with Franklin and volatile history with Trevor create dynamic relationships that bring out different aspects of his personality. What keeps Michael from ranking higher is that his arc ultimately feels somewhat unresolved. Depending on the player's choices, his story can end in different ways, but none feel like a definitive conclusion to his character's journey. Still, his complexity and the novelty of his situation make him one of the most memorable protagonists in the series. Breaking into our top 3 at number 3 is Tommy Vercetti from Vice City. Tommy was revolutionary for the series, the first fully voiced protagonist with a distinct personality and character arc. Ray Liotta's performance brought Tommy to life in a way that made him feel like the star of his own crime film, not just an avatar for the player. Tommy's journey from recently released convict to drug empire kingpin is the quintessential GTA story. What makes it work so well is how Tommy's personality drives the narrative. His ambition, his ruthlessness, and his refusal to be anyone's pawn push the story forward at every turn. When he declares, "This is the last time anyone's gonna mess with Tommy Vercetti," you believe him. Vice City's 1980s setting provides the perfect backdrop for Tommy's rise to power, with the excess and opportunity of the era matching his own ambitions. The game's homages to Scarface and Miami Vice are well known, but Tommy never feels like just an Al Pacino imitation. He's his own character with his own motivations and methods. What keeps Tommy from ranking higher is that, groundbreaking as he was, the protagonists who came later benefited from more advanced storytelling techniques and nuanced writing. Tommy is somewhat one-dimensional compared to our top two. He's driven by ambition and revenge without much internal conflict or growth. But his iconic status, memorable personality, and perfect fit with Vice City's setting and themes earn him this high ranking. At number 2, we have Niko Bellic from GTA 4. Niko represents the most dramatic shift in how Rockstar approached protagonist characterization. He's not an ambitious criminal looking to climb the ladder. He's a war-scarred immigrant seeking a fresh start and finding that the American dream is just as corrupt as the life he left behind. Niko's world-weary perspective and tragic backstory give GTA 4 a depth and gravitas that the series hadn't achieved before. His experiences in the Bosnian War shaped him into a man capable of terrible violence but haunted by his actions. This internal conflict between his capacity for brutality and his desire for peace drives much of the game's narrative tension. What makes Niko so compelling is that his criminal actions feel contextual rather than aspirational. He's not trying to build an empire, he's trying to survive in a new country while dealing with the trauma of his past. His reluctance to embrace the criminal lifestyle, even as he's drawn deeper into it, creates a poignant commentary on cycles of violence and the difficulty of escaping one's nature. Niko's relationships, with his cousin Roman, with the various women he dates, with the criminals he works for, all feel complex and often tragic. The choices the player makes throughout the game lead to different outcomes, but none offer Niko a truly happy ending, reflecting the game's more mature and somber tone. Niko ranks this high because he represents the most fully realized character study in the series. His journey is personal rather than bombastic, and his character feels like it could exist outside the game in a way that earlier protagonists don't. The only reason he doesn't take the top spot is because of one character who perfectly embodies the chaotic essence of Grand Theft Auto itself, and at number 1, the greatest GTA protagonist of all time, Trevor Phillips from GTA 5. Trevor is the ID of the Grand Theft Auto series given human form. Unpredictable, ultra-violent, darkly hilarious, and surprisingly complex beneath his chaotic exterior. What makes Trevor the perfect GTA protagonist is how he bridges the gap between gameplay and narrative. When players cause random mayhem in GTA, something we've all done, it feels consistent with Trevor's character in a way it never did with more rational protagonists. He's the only character where the chaos of free roam play actually enhances the storytelling rather than contradicting it. But Trevor is far more than just a vehicle for violence. Stephen Ogg's incredible performance reveals layers to the character that could have easily been missed with a less nuanced approach. Trevor is fiercely loyal to those he considers friends. He's intelligent despite his unhinged behavior. And most surprisingly, he adheres to his own twisted moral code. He's disgusted by the hypocrisy of government torture while unhesitatingly brutal to those who cross him. Trevor's relationship with Michael forms the emotional core of GTA 5. His sense of betrayal upon discovering Michael faked his death, his complicated feelings of friendship and hatred, and their ultimate reconciliation, in most endings, create a complex dynamic rarely seen in video games. Trevor may seem like a simple psychopath at first glance, but his emotional wounds and vulnerability make him surprisingly relatable despite his extreme behavior. What truly elevates Trevor to the top spot is how perfectly he embodies the themes of GTA 5. The thin veneer of civilization covering our baser instincts, the hypocrisy of American society, and the dark side of the pursuit of freedom. He's both a critique and celebration of everything Grand Theft Auto represents as a series. In a franchise full of memorable characters, Trevor Phillips stands alone as the most iconic, the most complex, and the most perfectly realized GTA protagonist of all time. Before we wrap up, I want to give some honorable mentions to characters who didn't quite make the main list. CJ from San Andreas would have ranked high if I included him, but I've saved him for a separate video where I'll do a deep dive into why his journey through San Andreas remains one of gaming's most iconic stories. The GTA Online protagonist, despite being silent and customizable, has witnessed and participated in some of the most elaborate heists and criminal enterprises in the GTA universe. Their lack of defined personality keeps them off the main list, but their adventures deserve recognition. Characters like Vance's brother Lance or Luis's friend Yusuf Amir all bring something special to their respective games, even if they aren't the main protagonists. So there you have it. My definitive ranking of every major GTA protagonist from worst to best. From Claude's silent stoicism to Trevor's chaotic brilliance, each character represents a different approach to storytelling in the Grand Theft Auto universe. What's fascinating is how these protagonists reflect the evolution of the series itself, from simple crime sandboxes to complex narrative experiences that comment on American culture, capitalism, and the dark side of the pursuit of wealth and power. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Do you agree with Trevor taking the top spot? Would you rank Niko higher? Is there a protagonist you think I've underrated? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this ranking, consider subscribing for more deep dives into gaming's most iconic franchises. Next time, I'll be exploring the evolution of GTA's mission design and how it reflects changing trends in game development. Until then, this is GameWare, signing off. Thanks for watching.